AfroTales Podcast is a part of the Connected Podcast Network. Chef. Yes, Glio. Don't you love how we get to share our stories and recipes? Yes, I enjoy it greatly. Do you know what makes it possible for everyone to hear us? Yes, Glio. Our voices, obviously. True, but it's also Anchor, a hosting platform that distributes the podcast to places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and others. Oh, yes. And isn't everything needed to make a podcast in one place? That's correct. And the best thing of all, Chef, it's free. Free, you say? Free. And all I had to do is download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. So, you just had to download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Yep, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm and do what we're doing now. Fantastic, Grio. Simply fantastic. I know, Chef. I know. Well, hello there. I'm Aman Mazingo, your storyteller, and this is season 2 of the AfroTales podcast, where we journey through the Americas and the Caribbean to explore the tales that grew from its African diaspora. I want to thank Art by Chalet for the beautiful episode art, and especially thank you for joining us on today's adventure. John outran the Lord. You know, before surrender, old master had a slave named John. Old John was always prayed up every night before he went to bed. His prayers was for God to come and get him and take him to heaven right away. He didn't even want to take time to die. He wanted the Lord to come and get him just like he was, boots, socks, and all. He'd get down on his knees and say, "Oh Lord, it's once more and once again your humble servant. Knee bent and body bowed. My heart beneath my knees and my knees in some lonesome valley, crying for mercy while mercy can be found. Oh Lord, I'm asking you in the humblest way I know how, to be so pleased as to come in your fiery chariot and take me to your heaven and its immortal glory. Come, Lord. You know I have such a hard time. Old master works me so hard and doesn't give me time to rest. So come, Lord, with peace on one hand and pardon in the other, and take me away from this sin-sorrowing world. I'm tired. I want to go home. Amen. One night, old master passed John's shack and heard him begging the Lord to come and get him in his fiery chariot and take him away. So he made up his mind to find out if John meant it. He went on up to the big house and got himself a bed sheet and came on back. He threw the sheet over his head and knocked on the door. John quit praying and asked, "Who's that?" Old master said, "It's me, John, the Lord. I'm coming in my fiery chariot to take you away from this sin-soaked world." Right under the bed, John found he had some business. He told his wife, "Tell him I'm not here, Liza." At first, Liza didn't say anything at all, but the Lord kept right on calling. "Come on, John, and go to heaven with me, where you won't have to plow any more furrows and hoe any more corn. Come on, John." Liza said, "John isn't here, Lord. You have to come back another time." The Lord said, "Well then, Liza, you'll do." Liza whispered and said, "John, come out from underneath the bed and go with the Lord. You've been begging him to come get you. Now go on with him." John was back under the bed, not saying or mumbling a word. The Lord is out on the doorstep, and he kept calling. Liza said, "John, I thought you were so anxious to get to heaven. Come out and go on with God." John said, "Didn't you hear him say you do? Why don't you go with me?" "I'm not going anywhere. You're the one who's been whooping and hollering for him to come get you. And if you don't come out from under that bed, I'm going to tell God you're here." Old Master, still pretending he was God, said, "Come on, Liza. You'll do." Liza said, "Oh, Lord, John is right here under the bed. Come on, John, and go to heaven with the immortal God." "Come on, John, and go to heaven with me to immortal glory." John crept out from under the bed, and he went to the door and cracked it. And when he saw all the whites standing there on the doorstep, he jumped back. He said, "Oh, Lord, I can't go to heaven with you in your fiery chariot in these old dirty breeches. Give me time to put on my Sunday pants." "All right, John, put on your Sunday pants." John fumbled around a long time, changing his shirt, and then he went to the back door. Old Master was still on the doorstep. John had nothing else to change into, so he opened the door a little piece and said, "Oh, Lord, I'm ready to go to heaven with you in your fiery chariot. But the radiance of your countenance is so bright, I can't come out with you right here. Stand back just a little way, please." Old Master stepped back a little. John looked out again and said, "Oh, Lord, you know the pure, humble me is less than the dust beneath your shoe soles. And the radiance of your countenance is still so bright, I can't come out to you. Please, please, Lord, in your tender mercy, stand back a little bit farther." Old Master stepped back a little bit more. John looked out and said, "Oh, Lord, heaven is so high and we're so low. You're so great and I'm so weak. And your strength is too much for us poor suffering sinners. So once more again, your humble servant is bent knee and body bowed, asking you one more favor before I step into your fiery chariot and go to heaven with you and wash in your glory. Be so pleased in your tender mercy as to stand back just a bit farther, please." Old Master stepped back a step or two more, and out of the door John came like a streak of light. He ran all across the pumpkin patch, through the cotton, over the pasture. John ran, and here comes Old Master right behind him. By the time they hit the cornfield, John was way ahead of Old Master. Back in the shack, one of the children was crying, and she asked Liza, "Mama, you reckon God's going to catch Papa and carry him to heaven with him?" "Shut your mouth talking that foolishness," Liza answered the child. "You know the Lord can't outrun your pappy, especially when he's barefoot at that." The end. Well, I'm telling you, I loved this story. If you guys could hear me, you might be able to hear me smiling or in parts of this one. But I loved this story. John outrunning the Lord. You may have heard me go into a little bit of the old harmonics, the hooping and hollering that you hear in a lot of Southern churches and everything like that. And I apologize if anybody feels offended by me doing that. I grew up in on the West Coast, but we have a lot of Southern Baptist churches or Methodist churches and everything like that. And I grew up with that style of preaching, so it comes natural for me. A lot of people, get offended when you do that type of thing, but I apologize. It's not to be offensive, but and in the reading, that's just what came to me. Okay. I also want to say thank you for getting this far. This was the final episode of season 2, and I just want to thank you for getting here and being on this journey with me. It's awesome, right? I have fun, and I love doing it, and I can't wait to start season 3. But to get into this story, you can see this, right, happening. Somebody begging for God to come get them. And even if it was really God, if it was really the Lord there, they probably would still react the same way. Even though it was Master coming to, fool with him to see if he was really serious, they would probably react the same way, right? How many times do you know somebody be like, if they could just do this, or they're begging for whatever, or they say, well, if I was in this certain situation, this would be my reaction. And then they get in that situation or a similar situation too, and their reaction is the exact opposite. Growing up, we would always say, oh man, if they would have ran up on me like this, or if I was in that situation, I would have, punched them out or whatever. And then that same person that made that statement would get into an altercation and not only wouldn't punch the person out, would actually get beat up. It's crazy, but that's what happens. Or they would run away, So people will always say they want certain things. People will, I won't say always, but people will want certain things or preach about how much they want certain things or what they'll do, but not live up to that when the time comes. And that's John here, right? This is an old John tale. There's a lot of them. There's tons of them. John is just like your Jacks, your Jims, your Harrys, that common name that will be in a lot of stories, especially in folktale. In a lot of African American folktales in America, you will run into Johns or Jacks. Will be in a lot of other countries or Caribbean. You'll get Jacks. It just depends on what the common name is, right? But I loved it. I loved how he reacted to that, and the wife was like, "Now Massa ain't gonna catch him. God can't catch your pappy when he ain't got no shoes on." Right? So I thought that was awesome. But that was the final story of the season. I hope you liked it. And don't forget to stay tuned for the recipe of the week. All right? So I don't have too much more to say about this one. I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for coming this far. And I hope you'll be here when season 3 starts, which will be very soon. I won't take such a long break this time. Okay. Again, thank you for doing this and being on this journey and experiencing it and listening to my voice and my voices, that my characters, and I hope you enjoyed them also, right? But as always, thank you and have a gloriously blessed day. And I will see you next time, or you will hear me next time. This is your AfroTales recipe of the week. Baked mac and cheese. Ingredients: 16 ounces of elbow macaroni, 8 ounces sharp cheddar cheese shredded, 8 ounces Kobe Jack cheese shredded, 8 ounces part skim mozzarella cheese shredded, 8 ounces American cheese cubed, 4 ounces cream cheese cubed, 1 cup half and half, 1 cup heavy cream, kosher salt and freshly cracked black pepper to taste, half teaspoon smoked paprika, optional, 1 to 2 teaspoons garlic powder, 1 teaspoon onion powder, 1/4 teaspoon mustard powder, 2 large eggs. Directions: preheat oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Butter an 8x11 baking dish and set aside. Fill a large stock pot or Dutch oven halfway with water. Add in a large pinch of salt and bring to a boil. Add in elbow macaroni and cook until just under al dente, according to package directions. Do not fully cook or overcook the macaroni pasta. It'll finish cooking through completely in the oven. Once just under al dente, drain the pasta. While the pasta is boiling, use a wooden spoon to mix the half and half heavy cream, half of the cheddar cheese, half of the Kobe Jack cheese, all of the mozzarella cheese, all of the American cheese, and all of the cream cheese in a large mixing bowl. Add smoked paprika, optionally, garlic powder, onion powder, mustard powder, and some kosher salt and pepper. Stirring well and tasting the mixture to ensure there is all good flavor. Do not add too much salt, since cheese is pretty salty and will add its saltiness as it bakes. Once satisfied with the seasoning, mix the eggs in until well incorporated with a wooden spoon. Add the drained macaroni and cheese and the milk cheese egg mixture into your prepared baking dish, stirring to make sure the cheese mixture is well distributed throughout the macaroni. Top the macaroni evenly with the rest of the cheddar cheese and Kobe Jack cheese. Sprinkle the top with a little more smoked paprika if desired. Bake the pan 35 minutes or until macaroni and cheese is bubbling and the cheese is nicely browned. Do not overbake or the macaroni pasta will become mushy and the cheese mixture will become dry. Let the macaroni and cheese cool for about 10 minutes or until cool enough to serve. Serve hot so the cheese is nice and creamy. Keep wrapped in the fridge for up to 4 days. That is your AfroTales recipe of the week. Thank you again for your time. Thank you for supporting and sharing this podcast with your family and friends. You can always find AfroTales Podcast on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to leave me a message or a tweet, I can be found on Twitter at AfroTalesCast, on Instagram and Facebook at AfroTalesPodcast, and now on Coffee at coffee.com/AfroTales Podcast, where you can financially support me for the price of one small cup of coffee. However you support, I thank you and I appreciate it always. So until next time, have a great day.